Life is a new thing for us, so
Anything about tech.
Yeah, I know. That's good for sure.
I have a microphone for you as well. Sorry, everybody.
And there's that for you. So it's on. So
Microphone?
you can hear you. Yeah. So you can just pin it or use the magnet.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Thanks for bearing with us through those technical difficulties. My name's Megan. I'm the community relations specialist here at Hospice. Yes. At Hospice of North Idaho. Just some quick things. We need to use the restroom. It's out these doors and to the left. So you can use that. Make sure if you haven't signed in after the talk, just make sure to sign in so we know that you were present and we can get a head count who was here. And then I'd love to introduce our speakers. So Laura, is it Templeman?
Mm-hmm.
Laura Templeman graduated from the State University of New York at Binghamton as a pre-medical philosophy major, graduating with a master's in philosophy from University of New Mexico at Albuquerque, and attended University of Idaho Postmaster, studying psychology and philosophy. She's also a certified philosophical counselor and teaches mindfulness meditation in addition to philosophy, world religions, ethics, and logic. A fan of lifelong learning, she not only teaches but takes classes most semesters. Philosophy, psychology, and physics are some of her favorite subjects, but her interests have widened to things not starting with the letter P, such as biology, sign language, Spanish, golfing badly. She said that, not me. Gardening poorly, again, she said that, not me. And cooking without burning things. She grew up in New York with lightning bugs, lived in California with roaches and lots of sun, enjoyed New Mexico's black widows and sunshine, and now resides in Idaho with mosquitoes and low vitamin D opportunities for half the year. When not teaching, she may be found running away from bugs, just kidding, or walking along the lake listening to audiobooks. In her free time, with her other free time spent with family and friends, as well as alone, and playing pub trivia, wondering if she's a sunflower and trying to have meaningful connections with people. She lives on 2 acres with her husband and her family dog, Sophie, their cat, Herwin Schrodinger, chickens, mostly unnamed, and an unwelcome skunk. So without further ado, let's welcome Laura Templeman.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Can you hear me in the back? So I don't, if the microphone is working or not working, okay. So I'm Professor Laura Templeman, and on that last comment, the skunk has visited us 3 times this last week, which is very unpleasant. Our dog finally has learned to stay inside because she doesn't like all the baths that she gets afterwards, so very fun. I think there's like a little family of newborn skunks across the street from us, and they come over and visit. So that's fun. It's made for sleepless nights a few times this week. So I am a professor at North Idaho College, and I have been teaching for 26 years. I know I'm not supposed to admit that, but there it is. I do teach world religions, which is why I was asked to come here and give a presentation on end-of-life care, specifically for atheism, which is not technically a religion, but falls, under that category umbrella. I teach intro to philosophy, which is like the classical, what is philosophy, meaning of life sort of stuff. I teach logic and critical thinking. I teach introduction to ethics, which is a philosophy class that talks about how to have an objective view of morality. And then I teach something called the Common Read at North Idaho College, which is a book that rotates around every 2 years and usually has something to do with philosophy or psychology. So there's me in a nutshell. And I didn't realize that she was going to read that whole thing. So that's my blurb on the college website. So there you go. So let me just give an overview of what I'm going to cover today. I'm going to start out with some statistics to kind of give an overview of the population and religion in general. I'm going to talk about the public and how the public views atheism, some definitions of terms. I'm going to try to describe what an atheist actually is or what they believe in. And then I'll talk about end-of-life services and respectful things to say and to do. And then if we have, hopefully we'll have time at the end and if there's any questions. But as I'm going through, if you have questions, feel free to interrupt. It's better to ask the questions while we're talking about the material. I'm going to start out with some statistics. So if you look at these statistics right here, these are 2023, almost at 8 billion people, where all of the different religions stand. So Christianity is about 31% of the world population. I realize that in the United States, it's about 70-something percent, but worldwide, it's about 30%. So whatever religion you are, there's not more than a third of the world that is in the same group as you. So it's good to look outside, which is why when I teach world religions, we spend 2 weeks on each religion, each of these other religions, because they're in other places in the world, the main religion sometimes. So Islam is about 25% of the world population. So those numbers are just under 2 billion and just over 2 billion for Christianity. And then the third largest group, which is just unaffiliated, and atheists are in that group, is about 15 to 16%, and that's about 1.2 billion people. And then you can see the rest of them after that. Total world population is, I actually have a worldometers that I can bring up, but we're over 8 billion now. So about 1 in every 8 people is considered unaffiliated. They're not all atheists, but they're in that group. So sometimes it's easier to just look at a pie chart. Right? Christianity, healthy chunk, and between Christianity and Islam, that's more than half the world population. But the next largest chunk out of the pie is, sometimes they're called the nuns, or they don't believe in anything particular. They have no religion. All right, and you'll notice, if I was better at making pie charts, I could have these pop out right here. You'll notice that when we get down to the smaller numbers, all of the other religions, except the ones listed up there, are so small I can't even show them to you, 61 million people. And then lastly, Judaism, which is 15 to 16 million people in the world. And about half of that population lives here in the United States.
Laura, quick question.
Yeah.
For the nuns group, does that also capture people who might say, I believe in a higher power, but I don't have any, any formalization of that? I believe there's some higher power out there, but I don't believe in any religion.
Right. Yeah. So not believing in God and believing in a spiritual realm. Yes, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Gotcha. Okay. And so just as an overview, these were 2010 numbers, a little bit less than what I gave you before. And in 2050, the percentages will be largely the same for Christianity, but Islam will have about 30%. So they'll be roughly equal, 30 and 30%-ish. And that's largely because in areas like Northern Africa, these are places that have very high population growth. So more people are that religion. You're usually the religion that you grow up with. Even though all of the numbers go up a little bit, the percentages go down with respect to the total world population sometimes. Okay, so in the United States, people who classify themselves as nuns are about 23% of the US population and 27% in Idaho. And I was actually startled to find that statistic. And the links for everything that I have are embedded in the PowerPoint. I'm happy to send you the PowerPoint, but this is where I got all that information from the US Census and from groups that compile that information. And I just wanted to give you kind of a different version of, to put things in order, like kind of where they are. If you look at that very top bar, that's the largest group with a little over 1.5 billion people. And that is people who are Sunni Muslim. So that's the absolute largest group in Islam. There's 2 or 3 other smaller branches as well. Then the next largest is Catholic, which is about 1.25 billion people. And then not shown on this, but would be the next one right here at 1.2 would be unaffiliated. So even looking at the branches, you can see that there are quite a few people who put themselves in that category, unaffiliated. And then one last time looking at this in a different way, in the religious landscape in the United States, and again, this is based on the 2020 census, all of these right here, oh, well, thank God it's not mine. All of these right here are the blue and the green are various forms of Christianity. And then this about 5% are all of the other kinds of religions. And then 23% are the population that don't affiliate themselves. So just different ways of breaking it out according to the census, which is why the census questions were so long this time. So the percentages of people who don't affiliate have been growing over time. And so this chart shows 4 different age groups in each section. So this is 1986, and these are 50 to 65 or 65 and older who would call themselves unaffiliated. And then 10 years later, more in each group. The first group is 18 to 29. 2006, so every 10 years they were doing it. 2016, this is the highest number of people between 18 and 29 who would say they don't affiliate themselves. And then they should wait 6 more years to do this to have an accurate chart, but okay, so this is the most recent numbers based on the census. It says 36%. And notice all of the numbers have gone up over time. Yeah.
Something that occurred to me is that many religions proselytize or actively recruit, some more aggressively than others. Mm-hmm. Yet I assume that the nuns don't recruit. I mean, they don't try to spread their non-religion or whatever.
Well,
so
I mean,
it's interesting that they are growing like that.
Yeah, first of all, it's not a monolithic group. It's just everybody who doesn't fall under the category of one of those specific religions. So there's not like meetings every Friday night or something, you know. Yeah. So they don't have like some active recruiting thing. But if you know somebody who's an atheist or doesn't affiliate, you probably have talked to them about their belief system. So it's not, they don't proselytize, but they are happy to talk about it. Yeah. So just kind of getting an overview, an umbrella view of religions in the country, in the world, and the position that the unaffiliated takes in population. So let's talk specifically about atheists, and we'll talk about some statistics and some definitions, and that'll cover some of the things that you asked about in terms of spiritual and not believing in God. So atheists are not seen warmly. Most of the time, and this is a 2017 statistic over here, about 50% of the US population is not friendly or warm towards somebody if they tell you that they're an atheist. And the only group below that is Islam. And I don't know what the current views on this would be, but I don't imagine that this part has changed very much. If you know somebody from a particular group, like if you know an atheist, you may have warmer feelings because it humanizes this idea that not you in particular, but the general big you, that you usually associate with something that you don't like, the 50% of the population. And just because it's interesting, the census broke this out into 2 different groups. They did the Republican group and the warmth of the Republican feelings towards atheists. And the older the respondent gets, the less likely they are to feel warm towards an atheist. And Democrats, regardless of age. But notice that this is a scale from 1 to 100, and that top number is 40. So there's not a lot of warmth going on towards atheists. All right, so atheism remains the most disliked religious minority in the United States. So I want to qualify that. This is from University of Minnesota and some research that they did. Atheism is not a religion. So it's the absence of religion. And the only thing that is tying this group together is their unaffiliation in various ways. So this group, this unaffiliated group, is the third largest group in the world. And there might be more nuns than people admit because they're looked at so harshly sometimes. So I don't know how many atheists would be in the closet and would want to admit it. So 40% of Americans disapprove of not having a religion. And this statistic says that about a third, or 27% of the Americans, would say that atheists don't share their morals or values. So here are some of the different categories that you can see underneath the nuns. And I'm going to go through some vocabulary with this. But about 4% are atheists, 4% are agnostic, 7% are spiritual but not religious, that group you were talking about, and about 19% are just nothing in particular. So let's talk about some definitions. This word theism up on top means belief in God. And so someone who is a monotheist believes in one God, and that would be the Western religions of the world. Actually, even Hinduism is monotheistic because they believe in one creator with various expressions. Polytheism is believing in more than one God, and that would be like the ancient Greeks or the Romans with their all their gods and goddesses. Pantheism, this beginning prefix means all, so that means everything is God. The entire universe itself is God, according to this view. And I don't know if you're familiar with Taoism, but that would be the view that everything is the Tao, or the way. So there's one thing, and that's the Tao, and the entire universe is made from that. And so oftentimes indigenous religions have a pantheistic or even panentheistic, that everything is God, and even if there is a distinct God that created the world, that God would be infused into everything within the world. So that's what pantheism means. Non-theism would be a group that's in the nones. So if theism is belief in God, non-theism is not believing in God, but having the idea that there could be a spiritual realm. So this is a healthy chunk of that none population. And then atheism is the opposite of belief in God. A negates the idea. So theism, belief in God, and atheism is not believing in God. I put in some extra words here too. Deism is what a lot of our founding fathers were. They believe that God created everything and then steps back and humans are responsible for everything, and physics is responsible for everything else that's going on. Okay, so the difference between theism and Gnostic is sometimes not understood. So theism is belief in a God. Gnostic means knowing God or knowing some spiritual truth. And most religions have a branch, a Gnostic branch within their sub-branches. So again, the negation of knowing about God is what an agnostic is. And so somebody who says, Gnostic is to know, and somebody says, I don't know. I don't know enough information, or I can't have an opinion because I can't prove one way or the other. So people are sometimes agnostic. You can be agnostic and lean towards atheism, which is what a lot of atheists are. And agnostic is a word that is seldom used, and it means I don't even know what we're talking about God, so I can't even begin this conversation. Like, I'm ignorant of what this concept even means. So very unused word. Some words associated with the nuns or with atheism in particular is secular humanist. Secular means not religious. And a humanist is somebody who focuses on the human realm rather than the supernatural realm, and trying to have achievements that are within our ability, not looking for anything beyond the physical realm. So based on humans, basically. Okay, so this nebulous term of soul, I'm sure every person in here would come up with a different definition of it, some kind of ephemeral essence. Most of the time, an atheist would say that a soul doesn't exist, because that would imply that there would be some entity that continued on or could possibly live on. Everything that I say today, when I say most, it's because it's most. You'll always find some people who would have a differing view. So it's a generalization. We've talked about the nuns so far, and there's a specific group called the Brights that I found out a few years ago. They're just a group of people who don't believe, they're atheists, and they have a website, and they kind of go through all their ideas on there. Okay, so are there any questions, by the way? Really feel free to stop me as we're going along. Okay, so who are atheists? Like, what are their beliefs? How did they come to this choice, which it is a choice to be an atheist? What kind of mindset does an atheist have? And what is it like to be an atheist? Because I'm talking to you all because you're in healthcare and you're either dealing with somebody who is possibly dying that is an atheist, or the family members of that person who might be atheist, or both. And so to try to understand, what's going on in their minds and who they actually are, that's what I'm trying to get across in this point. So first of all, most atheists make a choice to become atheists, and it's usually through a lot of research on religion. So most atheists know quite a bit about other religions. So this is a quiz on knowledge of the Bible, and atheists come in third, and Mormons and white evangelical had the highest in that. In the world religions, so understanding of religions across the world, they come in second highest, and in understanding religion and public life, they understand the most. So they got the highest number correct. So it's not like some thoughtless position that these people have taken. It is out of a good deal of self-searching and understanding and researching that they decide to come to this perspective usually. Okay, so I talked about this before. Atheists are not just one monolithic group. The nuns are not just one monolithic group. So these are the beliefs of some atheists. Again, I do have to always qualify that because somebody will come up and say, no. So there are a variety of beliefs. These are some of the more common ones. The first one is when you realize how mathematically unlikely you are, you have this amazing awareness of the tiny time that you have here and the unlikeliness of you actually being here at all. So it's like a gift to have this experience of life. And so you have gratitude for this chance that you so easily could not have had. I'm kind of leery about opening another website. We'll see how this goes.
Do you need volume for it?
No. Oh yeah, there's my world population one. Okay, I need the link for it. And where is the PowerPoint over here now?
PowerPoint.
You know what? I'll just show you that later. I'll just describe what it says.
Can we bring your PowerPoint back up?
Okay.
You control tab.
Okay, we'll just stick within this. At the end, if there's time, I'll show you some of these extra things. Also, you can email me and I'll send you this entire presentation. So the odds of you being born, that's the thing that I was going to show you, and this is like a video rendition of it. It talks about the likelihood of you being born. So first of all, even just your parents meeting and staying together long enough to have kids, and then the vast number of sperm and eggs that could have got together in just the combination that makes you, just right there, you're just extremely mathematically unlikely. And so thoughts like this are part of the reasoning behind why an atheist would say, life is so special and I get this one chance and I hopefully want to do something good with it. So they really have gratitude for life. I'm going to read this. We are going to die, and that makes us the lucky ones. Most people are never going to die because they're never going to be born. The potential people who could have been here in my place, but who will in fact never see the light of day, outnumber the sand grains in Arabia, actually outnumber the atoms in the universe. Certainly those unborn ghosts include greater poets than Keats, scientists greater than Newton. We know this because the set of possible people allowed by our DNA so massively exceeds the set of actual people. In the teeth of these stupefying odds, it is you and I and our ordinariness that are here. And so there's a sense of gratitude for being able to get the experience of being alive. That's Dawkins, by the way. So atheist mindset on what happens in the afterlife, nothing. So how do they deal with this anxiety? Because one of the biggest anxieties we all have besides public speaking is death, right? We all die. My parents died, their parents died, it runs in the family, right? We all have to deal with this eventually with our loved ones and then at the end of our lives. And so how do atheists deal with this anxiety? Because usually religion covers that angst. It tells you what's going to happen afterwards. It gives you an organized perspective about what's going to happen. Usually in Christianity, there's heaven and hell, and each religion has its own version of what the afterlife is. But atheists don't believe in an afterlife. They don't believe that your soul, whoever you are, you want to call that your soul or not, the essence that is you does not move over beyond your physical body. It's from your physical body and cannot exist without it. So some of the ways that they deal with that anxiety is to say that they have biological immortality. If they have children and they've passed on their genetics, that their genetics will live on through future generations. They believe in social immortality. So the friends and family and loved ones that they have, the impact that they make on them you'll remain in their memories, and you'll be remembered in that way. This is why a lot of people want to be famous, so that they're remembered by a lot more people. Right? So there's moral immortality. There's a really cool phrase in Judaism called Tikkun Olam, and it means leave the world a better place for your being here, basically. And so this moral immortality is the idea that you want to contribute something to the world, make it a better place if you possibly can through your being here. So that lives on. You've made the world a better place in a butterfly effect. And then the last one, life cycle immortality, is the idea that even though you are this physical entity now, when that comes apart, you'll become parts of other things in the universe. Weirdly, I was watching a comedian whose name I do not remember last night, and he talked about this because his wife had died, and he said, well, I kind of got used to her in the human form, not these various pieces, in the plants and whatever. So he was he was funny when he said it. I often have to script my jokes, so that was just off the cuff. Anyway, life cycle immortality is the fact that you are energy and you will give off your parts and pieces, and that energy remains in the universe, just in different forms. So these are things that usually are dealt with by religions and the beliefs of the religion, but atheists have to find different ways to deal with it. So I'm sure that you've met grouchy or angry atheists, as the term goes, but Hemant Mehta is what's called the friendly atheist. And so when he was younger and needed some money, he auctioned off his time on eBay and said, whoever pays me, whoever wins this auction, I will go to whatever church you want to send me to. So they bought him an hour in church, basically, was what he auctioned off. And it turns out that there was someone who won the auction and actually paid him a lot of money to go to a bunch of different churches. So he went to a lot of different kinds of churches. And he said, my stipulation is that you create a blog and you talk about them in each church that you go to. And so this book, I Sold My Soul on eBay, is his blog in book form, basically. All the ideas that he encountered in all of the different churches, in his view, as an atheist, experiencing all these things. So the link to that is right there as well. And that link, which I'm not going to show you right now, is an 11-minute video on him, a very friendly atheist, trying to explain some of the ideas. And because sometimes PowerPoint things don't work, I actually made a summary of this on the next page. So these are the ideas that he talks about in his video. And it's things that maybe you shouldn't say to an atheist, or misconceptions about atheism in general. So the link again is right there at the top of this page. But he said things that people say to him often, or things that they ask him, are covered in this video. He has quite a few videos like this, by the way. And one of the questions he asks is, where do you get your morality from? And his answer to that is, I hope that your morality is that you're not killing people just because of the words in this one book. Hopefully you have other reasons, and that's the reasons that atheists would have for not wanting to kill people either. So it's not just because it's in the Bible that you would want to not kill people. So you want to be a good person, not just because it was written in a book, but because that's what being a good person is about. A lot of those same values. what motivates you to get up in the morning? And hidden in that is implied that since you don't believe in any purpose, or since you don't believe in anything, or since you must be sad and empty without these other views, which is, he says, somewhat insulting, because he has lots of reasons for getting up in the morning and doing all the things that he does. He makes contributions to the world. So this is a common misconception that atheists are just, lost entities and have no reason for living. Is atheism a religion? No, and he gets asked that quite a bit. There is no religion that believes in unicorns either, he says. It's just a group of people that reject religion. That's the only really thing that binds them. Otherwise, they have whatever various thoughts they have. They just disagree that God is real and that organized religion is true. So how can you be sure you're right? And he very carefully says, I don't know that I'm right. We do not have proof of God or disproof of God. But he says, all things considered and everything that I've looked at using logic and critical thinking, I don't think that God exists. Therefore, I consider myself an atheist. I don't believe in it. That's where the evidence takes me. And in philosophy, there's a very famous thing called Russell's teapot. Bertrand Russell had this idea that imagine a teapot way out in the solar system orbiting Pluto. And even with your best telescopes, you can't see this teapot, but I'm telling you it's there and you should believe me. And he says this is an extraordinary claim. And if you make this extraordinary claim, you should have extraordinary evidence to back up that claim. And he's, of course, saying this is the same thing of God. We say God exists, yet we cannot have any proof of him whatsoever, yet you should believe. And he says if you have this extraordinary claim of God or a teapot, and somewhere out there, you should have extraordinary support for that. And he says that we don't have that support. Therefore, he's not sure that he's right, but he thinks that the belief in the teapot and God are misplaced. So hopefully that makes sense, right? How can you be sure you're right? He's not sure, but he leans towards that. What if you're wrong? A good God probably would not punish us, he says, for using our logic capabilities and maybe coming up with the wrong conclusion. So that's his idea of that. Although he's pretty sure he's not wrong. And this is something that gets said to atheists a lot. You're not really an atheist, you're an agnostic or you're spiritual. And that is said, but again, he says this is insulting. He says this is easier for you to say because then you can accept me better, but that's not who I am. Right? And so accept me as I actually am. I'm telling you I'm an atheist. That's my label. Don't put me in one of these other things because it makes you feel better. I'm in the position that I'm in and you try to accept me as I actually am. And he truly is a very kind person and open, and he really does try to have a positive interaction with people. So he's trying to point out that if you were to say this in another way to somebody else, it would be insulting. And so to think about, I'm telling you who I am, take me as I am, actually. And he also says, nobody questions people not believing in Zeus anymore, right? We dismiss Zeus, we dismiss, the gods of ancient Greece, and we're not saying, oh, we have to prove that. So he is an atheist, and he just dismisses the God of Christianity, the God of Abraham, in that same way. Why are you so angry? This is probably the question that most gets asked to atheists. So first, I'd like to say that there are some angry atheists, but there are also mostly not angry atheists who are just extremely tired of explaining all the time and being misunderstood. That's what I would say maybe comes across as anger. But if you think about it, and first of all, think about right hand and left-handedness, right? The world is set up for people with right-handedness. And people that are left-handed have to, in their entire life, accommodate every day in numerous ways. And so he says the default of the perspective, especially in the United States, is that religion is true and that God is true and Christianity is true. It's in our money and it's in the Pledge of Allegiance. And he said, imagine if on your money it said there is no God. Or imagine in the Pledge of Allegiance, it said there is no God. You wouldn't like that, and you would have to deal with that every day. We have our kids go and say that. I think that still happens in class every day. So he says it's baked in and it's exhausting, is his perspective. So why are you so angry? Maybe not angry, but depleted from trying to explain all the time. So he goes over other things, and there's a bunch of other links for him in there as well. But that's kind of like an overview of the I don't know, top 10 or so of the misunderstandings of atheists and what they actually truly believe. More good articles if you want them. So a summary of maybe some overall beliefs of atheists. You are very unlikely to exist mathematically, and that leads to this idea, kind of like a scientific awe. In Japanese, there's a word called yugen, which is like the goosebumpy feeling you get when you experience some cool nature thing. Like one time I was teaching at NIC and it was a night class, and I walked around the corner and I could see on the bush that I was passing all these icicles, and the moonlight was shining on them, and they were doing this little crackly thing. This was like over a dozen years ago, and I still remember it distinctly because it was so, goosebumpy. So that's what yugen is. And atheists often have that kind of feeling towards the awe of the universe around us and all the beauty and wonder of it. But they understand it scientifically and through logic. They don't believe in God or gods. And other than that, there isn't really anything else that unites them. They're a diverse group. The only common element between all of them is that they do not believe in God. So, summary of that. And I thought I would stop here for just a second and see if there are any questions, because I'm going to go on to like funerals and other stuff after that. It's a kind of different topic.
Fascinating.
Thank you. Also, feel free to ask me anything. I will not be personally affronted by any question you have. And it's the chance that you have here to ask all of the, whatever crazy thing that you may have heard. This is a good chance to bring it up so I can try to explain it if you have any ideas like that. So feel free. Okay. So let's talk about, since this is probably what you're most interested in, is the idea of end of life, either care for the individual who is sick or dealing with the family, or both, that might be atheists. So we all know that we need rituals, regardless of what religion or not religion we are. We need these rituals to help us psychologically get through all of the various things that we have in life. And so even though a person who's an atheist doesn't believe in God, that doesn't mean they don't want that grieving process to go on through a set of rites and rituals. And maybe they're not the rituals of Christianity. They're, maybe even individualistic ideas of what kind of way to celebrate this person's life. And oftentimes they are called celebrations of life. So it gives closure to the living. It lets them, vent their emotions in a healthy way. And it's part of the grieving process. Again, because atheists are a wide group of people, there's no one way that they would like to be either buried or cremated or what have you. This one is a link called a bios urn, where your ashes, you get cremated and your ashes are put in a pot with a tree, and then your family can plant it. Then you're never allowed to move because that tree is your relative. Sometimes they want to donate bodies, and yeah.
I saw a news broadcast about composting bodies. It's legal in certain states and not legal in others. What do you think about that? It sounded, at first it's creepy, of course, but really it sounded, after the whole program was over and it was just a short blurb on the national newscast, sounded like a pretty good idea to me. I'm not sure I'd want to be in my husband's garden, but what do you think about that? And is there a movement towards this biocomposting or whatever?
Yeah, I think there's a movement towards other things rather than burying bodies. And that's not just an atheist, but like kind of across the board, people want to do other things. So an atheist would be right on with that. That's, you are a bunch of physical particles. Those physical particles could go into something positive, maybe the last good thing that they could do.
It seems like the most likely way to have any kind of immortality.
And how many people know the reference of Soylent Green? Okay, so old movie. So you're right, other things are happening, and I should probably add that to the list and maybe see if there's any other things going on. But every atheist could have a different idea of what they want, and maybe they do want the traditional kind of burial in a coffin, an open casket, closed casket. Maybe they want to be cremated. Maybe they have some other idea entirely. Other religions, by the way, don't do the same thing that Christianity does. So there's lots of different ways of dealing with the dead, and it depends on what the individual really wants. Some atheists want to donate their body, again, to medicine, or I read a book by Mary Roach called Stiff. I should have put that on here. And she talks about all of the different things and ways that you can give your body, or do what you might do after you die. And I didn't realize this, but they need bodies to do things like crash test dummies and things like that. Or when they're trying to figure out ways to diffuse mines, they need bodies like to get blown up. I probably should have had a better presentation of that, but that's what I remember from the book. Anyway, there's lots of ways to donate your body besides just, going into a hospital or an anatomy and physiology class. Things to avoid. Don't make references to atheists about an afterlife because they don't believe in it. And it makes the atheist feel more alone, like you totally don't understand them whatsoever, and you're putting your views on them. So atheists don't want to have to make others feel better about their perspective at the end of life. They're already going through whatever the process is. It's very difficult, and they don't have the extra energy to do what they normally do, which is either have a conversation about it or just ignore it so that they can just move on. But they have to go through that every time somebody says something like that. Don't have religious readings or hymns or prayers. And so I tried to, I wanted to see if I could put you in an atheist's shoes. I mean, some of you might be atheists out there, I don't know. But to put yourself in their shoes, that's always a good rule of thumb when you're trying to be compassionate with other people. So imagine, I mean, if you do believe in God, can you try to imagine that you didn't believe in God? And just because you can imagine it doesn't mean it's true, right? So you can imagine that a person doesn't believe in God, that there is no next step or there's nothing afterwards. And how would you feel if your close relatives or whatever told you that there's a better place in the afterlife, like they'll be in heaven, they'll be watching you from heaven? It's alienating. At a time when they need connection the most, it separates them from whoever's talking to them because they don't know them, and they're putting their particular perspective on you, and you have to deal with that. So it's mentally exhausting to always have to experience this. And so compassionate behavior at that time would be to not do that. Even if you do believe in God and you disbelieve in atheism, that you still could be able to do that. So end of life should be not have atheists having to deal with these extra energy sucks, basically. So even if you don't agree, having compassion towards their beliefs is the kind thing to do at that time. All right, so let's talk about services. And oftentimes, more and more, even non-atheists are doing celebration of life rather than what's termed funeral, but they're the same sort of things. They're gatherings together, they're celebrations, right? You're honoring the person. Usually there's some kind of explanation of the person's life given. Oftentimes there's music, either their favorite music or classical music or what have you. These two sites right here, I got a lot of this information from them. And also from personal experiences, but the humanist and the atheist sites give a lot of examples about what you could be doing in actual ceremonies. You could have meaningful readings, and in the next few slides, I'll show you some of those. Many people have anybody who wants to come up and talk and share stories or memories or anything like that with the group. And if you want to have a final musical arrangement, and if there's any announcements, like you're getting together for, refreshments or whatever, to get together and continue the celebration of life, those things would go at the end. So there's nothing in stone. It's not like when you go to a Catholic funeral and there's a specific mass that they do. It's not like that. It's, usually there's a lot of pictures involved. There's some kind of, montage of pictures throughout life that people have just put in there. So humanists and atheists are sometimes /humanists. They view life as a chance to have this joyful experience and to try to live a good life. And the funeral is supposed to affirm and confirm that person's worth and that they did make an impact in your life. So it's more for the people who are staying after. It's not for the person who died, because they don't believe that there is any essence to them anymore. So these are good websites if you want to go to any of them. So this, my dad passed last year, and I cannot read this without crying. So it is really a very cool thing that, and my dad's not an atheist. He talks about life being like a train, and that you are, you know, thank you for being one of the passengers on my train. And all you have to do is do a Google search for train end of life, and there's so many of these come up. So I just grabbed this off a Google search. Oops. This one I can read. So this is Professor Brian Cox, because this was not at my dad's funeral, so less emotionally charged, right? Our story is the story of the universe. Every piece of everyone, of everything you love and everything you hate, of the thing you hold most precious, was assembled by the forces of nature in the first few minutes of the life of the universe, transformed in the hearts of stars or created in their fiery deaths. And when you die, these pieces will be returned to the universe in the endless cycle of death and rebirth. What a wonderful thing it is to be part of that universe. What a story. What a majestic story. Brian Cox is called the rock star of physics. He actually did used to be a rock star, but he does a lot of shows explaining physics to people. And this is one of the things that he tries to give to people about death. You know, you're part of this grand story going on from the beginning of the universe all the way through. And, you know, we're lucky to be part of it. So things like that. So what might you share at a ceremony, or if you were trying to help other people, what, you know, kinds of things could go on at ceremonies? You could definitely write down memories that you have. The funnier, the better, because that helps. When in doubt, Google it, right? If you're not good at writing, somebody else has probably written it, something that you want to say. And so go and look for that. It's not a cop-out. It's, you know, this emotional time where it's very difficult to get across these real things. And so go and find words that express what it is that you believe. Try to keep your condolences simple and don't add religious content. So don't say I'm praying for you. Don't say they're in a better place. Don't say they're in heaven. You know, give them strength and just be with them and help them to cope with their loss, or, you know, cope with the loss with them. And of course, atheists mourn the passing of anybody, just like everybody else would, but also they try to celebrate their life and the impact, because that's what the person would have wanted. Okay, things not to say. I think I've said all these already throughout the presentation, but here they are in a summary format. Don't say they're in a better place. Don't say you're in my prayers. Don't say I will pray for you, even though it's a nice gesture and the heart is in the right place. They don't believe in that. And so again, they're having to expend that extra emotional energy to put that part aside and just take the good from you. Everything happens for a reason, unless you want to say that reason is physics, or that their spirit will live on. It does live on in memories, but their essence does not live on. They're not looking down from heaven, according to atheists, and just don't include any references to supernatural in your condolences. Things that you can say, first of all, expressing real, sincere affection is always welcome. I mean, these are moments in life that are so important and they're difficult. So to say what you actually feel is a gift to the person. To express gratitude for the time and their relationship that you may have had with this person. Of course, to share memories and to share the impact that they might have had on your life. That's always nice, especially for family members, to hear what other people thought about your loved one. So tangible things that you can actually do to help. Everybody loves food, right? They're not really in the mood for cooking at the end of life. And so meal preparation for either the person who might be towards the end of life or the family of somebody that they've lost. Flowers are nice. Sometimes people put charities on there that they believe in, and you can donate to a charity. But other things that are very tangible, I mean, it's exhausting. If they have kids, offer to watch their kids. Just visit and be with the person. You don't have to do something huge. Just sit there and watch TV with them or whatever. Just be with them, cry with them, whatever. Offer to accompany them on the many responsibilities that end-of-life care gives you. There are so many things to do. Offer to help them with paperwork. You know this person. How can you specifically help them? So try to think of not the religious aspects of the the grieving process, but the practical ones and how you can actually be of assistance. And I'm sure that all of you are very helpful in many of those practical ways, helping people get through end-of-life care, atheist or not. Okay, so this is an example of one person who's an atheist and what they kind of believe happens after death, or like what their feeling is. So I know this person was 38 when they wrote it. I've only been around for less than 100 years out of this almost 14 billion years of the universe being in existence. Everything from plankton to dinosaurs and the formation of the UN to the moon landing and pizza happened before I became self-aware. I don't miss those things, nor do I recall this huge hunk of time as horrible or upsetting. I simply can't recall it because I wasn't there. And he says, not knowing anything else, death is probably like that. It's the absence of being there. I work on the assumption that after death, we go back to that pre-birth phase. I don't feel like it would bother me any more than it did during those first 14 billion years. This is actually a really comforting, peaceful idea when you give it some thought, especially because it makes me value this sliver of time that I have as a conscious living being for a few decades, a lot more than if I thought it was just a transit time to something else. It helps me not take my life for granted, nor other people's. So I don't know that everyone would agree that it wouldn't bother them more. I mean, it bothers you now that you won't be around, but once it happens, you won't be bothered because you're not there. This is a longer article. I just took those 2 paragraphs out of it. So if you want to read something about that, that's in there. But again, it's this idea that we're so unlikely to be here, and yet here we are, and even the crappy moments are amazing, right? So have them all, and be aware that, you know, maybe there's not something else. And I'll end with this. This is Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. I don't know her religious persuasion. I did not look it up. But she goes through the 5 stages of grief. And it's the acceptance stage of death in this case that helps give meaning to life and is definitely a personal growth stage. Death makes us appreciate life. And if in a world without death, we might not appreciate life as much. It gives it this specialness and meaning. So we're only here for this relatively brief period. What we do at this time is what makes it worth something. And most religions and non-religions say this. That I have a saying on my door, the Dalai Lama says something very much like that. We're here for 100 years, do something good for the planet while you're here. And so I don't know, I think I've tried to give like an overview of who an atheist is, what their perspectives might be, what they want to hear, what they don't want to hear, what they might find offensive. And I tried to do it from just the overall perspective, but it could be either the person who is dying who is an atheist, or the family of an atheist member, or a person who is an atheist who has had their family member die. All of those things kind of rolled in there. And that's it. How are we doing on time?
You're fast.
Question?
Yeah, I'm not a healthcare professional. I was looking on how I might volunteer since I'm retired to work for Hospice, who came across this seminar. And I'm an atheist, and I'm an atheist who came to that belief very early in life after having been forced to go to various religions. And I won't name them because I don't want to be an angry atheist.
Be the friendly atheist.
Indoctrination that was forced upon me for a long time, and I just intuitively knew it was all a bunch of bullshit. Anyway, so I have a couple of questions. One is, and I really identified with this, you know, you'll be in our prayers and all that. That's very offensive to an atheist. Basically it says you're wrong. It doesn't say I'm going to pray for you or I'm thinking of you. What it says to an atheist, if the person making the statement knows that it's an atheist, is that you're wrong. Your belief system or lack of it is wrong. That's what that thoughts and prayers stuff, how it strikes an atheist. And the other point, do you think it might be better? And I have a lot of really good friends who are, you know, Perseal Catholics, if you're familiar with that indigenous group, very right-wing Catholics and, you know, evangelicals and all the other stuff. But do you think it would be better, I guess what I'm trying to get to here, if an atheist cared for an atheist at the end of life? Personally, I would want an atheist to care for me. I would not want somebody who was trying to remember what they can say and what they can't say.
Or
Because I think
suppress
I
ideas.
think that really affects the authenticity of the interaction between those people. If they're trying to be a good caregiver and tamp down what they really want to say, which is, you know, repent while you got a chance. So do you think it would be better? That's what I would prefer if I had a choice. If somebody said you have a choice of your end of life caregivers, what do you think?
So I have a few things about that. Firstly, most atheists were religious and then renounced religion at some point in their life. There are some new hospice places that are, okay, I saw this a couple of years ago and I came across, I think it was Buddhist, but oftentimes Buddhists, they don't believe in a soul either. I could go into Buddhism, but they're as close to atheist as you can get. And there are hospice centers that are Buddhist. I don't know where they are. I'm going to say California. I don't know. But you could look that up. So I don't know about, you know, making across the board decisions about whether atheists should care for atheists. Maybe it should be an option. But Hemant Mehta, the guy who did I Sold My Soul on eBay, would say, this is your last opportunity to have an intercourse with someone about something so important and to share your ideas and maybe affect them. So he might be okay with whoever, as long as they were compassionate. So I don't really know how to answer your question. I do understand the idea that you might be more comfortable having someone care for you that had your same belief system, because it might appear more genuine, or it probably would be more genuine. I don't know who makes those decisions here. Get a little suggestion box. Somebody put them in there. Maybe it should be a possibility for those who want it.
And conversely, I think an atheist caregiver might have a little difficulty if they're surrounded by relatives that are praying and saying all that stuff. I mean, that would make me very uncomfortable and, you know, sort of encourage me to say things I shouldn't say to them at that point in time.
Well, if you were an atheist caregiver, first of all, you've had a whole lifetime of not saying things when people do stuff around you. Okay, so then you would be an atheist caregiver that would realize at this point of life, wrong time. It's not the right time. And you're there for the person as a human being, right? Not as their spiritual or non-spiritual guide. Right? You're there to give them what they need at the end. And to have respect for their beliefs, just like you want them to respect your beliefs. I totally hear you about all of this. And you know, those are things that if you watch the rest of those Hemant Mehta videos, they're all about 10 minutes. He just goes through so many things like that. Any more?
I have a two-part kind of philosophical question. Is your cat a typical cat who plays in boxes? And second part is, when the cat is in the box, play. Maybe not play. We don't know.
Well, I'm not there.
You'll get that joke. Maybe
I will get that joke because I named my cat Perwin Schrodinger. And Schrodinger is that cat that is both alive and dead at the same time. He does not play in boxes. And I know all pets have personalities. My dog, Sophie, I love her. This cat is got some issues. I don't know what's wrong with him. He loves my husband, but not me. He's a difficult entity. Yeah. And we found him at the dumpster when he was like 3 pounds. Somebody thrown him out. So we took him in, and I don't know.
He's been entertaining you ever since.
He's been entertaining my husband. He's been harassing me. That's the way it is. Yeah. Not really related to the topic. Yeah.
No, it's still fun.
Yeah. Did you have any other comments?
No, this is all pretty new to me. You know, obviously my parents have both gone, one in a quick way and another in a very long.
And were they atheists?
My mother was a Christian Scientist. My dad was a lapsed Lutheran, I guess you could say. I think he was probably an atheist, actually.
Mhm.
And so I was allowed, or if that's the right word, to try different religions. I was baptized a couple of 3 different times, you know, and I found that they were all basically the same thing, just a little bit of difference in the detail. So I just wanted to come and see what this was all about, because I do think it's really an important time in everybody's
Yeah.
life, and to understand it. And I wanted to try to understand a little bit more about what do atheists do when they're dying, you know?
Yeah.
And I thought, I don't want to die, but I probably will. I guess I will. Yeah.
Better to think about it prior to, right? Yeah.
Does the word sacred have religious connotations to it?
Yes, because sacred would be like some kind of event that connects you to whatever the religion is that you have. So, I mean, in a more colloquial sense, sacred could be just a regular term, but in a religious sense, it connotes something that's important in the religion.
What would be a word that we could use for end of life, like a ritual? Okay.
Like instead of saying it's a sacred time.
Yeah.
Oh, can't really think of a good vocabulary. I mean, it's a real life moment, and it's, you know, it's an opportunity to connect with people and to have your last meaningful interactions. I mean, it's a difficult time, and the same thing for everyone, but some people have religion to help them. Other people have the connections that they've made as atheists. You know, that's important to them, and that's how they feel that they've contributed. I'll think about some words about that. I can't really think of any off the top of my head. So it would probably be some kind of phrase. Any ideas? Yeah, not so much. Well, soul is this idea that there is an ephemeral part of you that exists outside of your physical entity. And an atheist would not believe in that. They would believe that you are who. It's not that you're not a conscious entity, but you are a compilation of your parts and pieces, ever changing, and that's what makes you the entity that you are, the conscious entity that you are. And when your parts and pieces disassemble, that conscious entity is not there anymore. And so just like your pre-birth, as that last slide showed, your post-birth, post-death, would be the same. You're just not there. So a soul, it's a common word, and everyone would know what you mean by it, but an atheist wouldn't believe in that. So you would have to speak to them as the human that they are and talk about, you know, if you're trying to, you know, comfort somebody who's at the end of their life, talk about all the contributions that they made and the people that they've touched, and, you know, what was worth it, you know, how do they feel about their time here, you know. If we only get this sliver, it's such a precious gift. Maybe that's a precious gift, something like that. So, and, you know, you could so easily have not been here. So if you require the PowerPoint, if you ask for the PowerPoint, you should watch that video. It's pretty amazing. The staggering mathematical impossibility of you. It's really almost zero.
Did you want to try and watch anything that we didn't click on? We could try, since we've gotten through it. We have a little bit of time. If you...
I could show that one. The Hemont Metha one, I pretty much gave all the synopsis of it, because I did have a feeling that sometimes these don't work. So I made the page just in case.
Which,
More towards the beginning.
Yeah, keep
Or
going.
middle.
this one?
No, a little bit further up. Keep going. Might have been that one.
This one?
Yes. Yeah, that one.
This one?
Yep.
Okay.
And of course, there's ads. Can you make it louder?
More sound though.
Not more sound. Can you hear?
Yes. Can you guys hear that?
The very specific, wonderful you that you uniquely are. So how'd that happen? What are the odds? Well, there's a countless multitude of factors that contributed to you being you in all your spectacular wonders. But let's take a very hypothetical look at all three of them. Your parents maybe, your parents sticking together, and your parents having a child that is the specific combination of reproductive cells that resulted in your magnificent residency on this planet. So let's look at your parents. For the purposes of this scenario, let's give your dad the benefit of the doubt and say that between the ages of 18 and 40, he at least interacted with one new woman every day in some small way. And that means he could socialize with roughly 8,000 women. What about a popular guy? And let's say, assuming he's not a hermit of the woods, that he very well could have potentially met anyone from, say, a tenth of the world's female population, which would be about 360 million. The odds that your mother was in that tiny group of people that he met are about 1 in 45,000. And there's no guarantee that they'll get along. So let's say that your father was engaged in a quality conversation with 1 out of every 10 women he met. From there, let's assume that out of those women, he went out on a date with 1 out of every 10. And let's say out of those women, he settled down with 1, and there was a 1 in 10 chance that those 2 crazy kids decided to stick it out. And let's give them a 50-50 chance of sticking together and deciding to have kids. That's 1 out of 10 times 1 out of 10 times 1 out of 10 times 1 out of 2, which equals 1 in 2,000. All right, apologies in advance, but let's talk about your parents having sex. The average male produces about 525 billion sperm cells in his lifetime. The average female has about 300,000 eggs at puberty, but releases around 400 in her reproductive lifetime. So out of all those cells, there was 1 unique sperm and 1 unique egg that needed to match up perfectly to make you specifically. And the odds of that happening are kind of staggering. 1 in 210 trillion. So if you want to factor in your parents meeting, sticking together, and having sex to make you specifically, the odds are about 1 in 45,000 times 1 in 2,000 times 1 in 210 trillion, which comes out to about 1 in 18.9 sextillion, which is a whole lot of zeros. So let's just say that you are pretty lucky to be here. And frankly, we're all pretty glad it worked out for you.
So, and there are a few different versions of that with different mathematical equations, but you're unique and highly unlikely. And so, it's awesome that you got to have this experience. I start my classes a lot with this because it's just overwhelming, the number of people. And some of the statistics I showed you, the ones that were for 2050 were modest. We'll most likely be over 10 billion at that point by 2050, which is, around the corner now, not that far away. Are there any other questions or comments?
I have a question for some of our staff in the room. Has anybody thus far in your career, have you taken care of people that identify as atheists? And how has that interaction been? And
I was gonna share a little earlier, I had this sweetest couple that we cared for, and the patient was an atheist and his spouse was not. She had spiritual beliefs, and it was really neat to see each of them be extremely supportive of the other's beliefs. And in my interaction with the patient, he was just very matter-of-factual about his beliefs and what he believed to be happening, and he was a physician in his life, and so for him it was very science-based, and there was just no more. It was just like, once I get through this, it's done, and that's okay. I'm good with that. And then he just honored space for his wife to be able to acknowledge what her need in that loss would be following his death. And so that was really sweet to see them come together and just work through that as a couple. And it was just a very unique perspective to see both of those perspectives in the same home together like that in a relationship, and how they navigated through that.
Yeah, and just because you're an atheist doesn't mean you have disrespect for other religions. Most people have the religious belief of their parents, but to the extent that they examine it, it becomes yours. And so whatever the person believes at that point should be the thing that is respected. Yeah. And so when we talked about those statistics of the younger population being more in the none section, that would mean that more children are not affiliated than their parents. So children are having to deal with parents in that respect. And that probably will happen for a little bit longer, I don't know, another 20 years or so until then they become the older generation. But so having respect for your parents' beliefs is something that's, you know, truly important as well. It's their time, and it's not time to try to convince somebody of something else. You know, that's their coping mechanism, that's their belief system, and as long as you aren't being disrespectful, then I think being respectful of whatever their perspective is the best way to go. And so to your point, you know, maybe it would be more genuine to have somebody not having to filter their comments, you know.
Yeah, that would be probably easier on both parties.
Yeah. Did you have a
Yeah,
comment?
No, I was going to say, was he a patient here?
Oh.
Because I got to meet him, and what a fascinating guy he really was. And he explained the whole story, and I said, usually whenever I walk in and I say that I'm a spiritual care volunteer, if you're an atheist, you generally don't want to see me. And he said, no, come on in, sit down, and just was really open about it, and he was a happy atheist.
Yeah. Yeah, that I sold my soul on eBay guy would totally agree with that opportunity.
He was very interesting. So I've had some great conversations with individuals that are atheists. I had a neighbor, and one time she and I sat down and I said, so what do you think happens when you die? She's like, you're dead. That's it.
Yeah.
And, but I could tell that when her mother passed away, she was, you know, she really did take it really hard. Because that was it. She's never going to see her mom again.
Right, right. Yeah, people who believe in heaven think that they'll see their loved ones again. And so even, you know, regardless of what your beliefs are, to have this understanding that other people truly think that there is nothing else is valuable, because it changes the way that you will interact with them. You know, you
And
can't.
just respecting each other.
Right. I
I'm
mean,
not trying to get her to change
right.
into my religion.
Right. And you can't promise them that there is this hereafter that they will be in. You have to, you know, not talk about that and find other ways to comfort them. Yeah. Did you have a comment?
I just want to make a statement that I think it's important that as hospice employees and professionals in this setting, that we are trained and held to an ethical standard, that we're not going to imply our personal beliefs in our professional setting, and that we're going to respect whatever the patient is experiencing and wants for their life. And so I just want to make sure that that's well known, and we all have training in experiencing this transitional period of life with whoever's on the other side. Not on the other side of life, but on the other side of the bed.
Right. And just even somebody that's just a different religion than you.
Right.
Right. There's a whole other set of, you know, belief system. Yeah.
And it goes for more than just a spiritual, for lack of a better term, belief. I mean, some people are willing, would prefer to feel more pain, for example, and be more present, or vice versa. So it's not just, you know, what you think or believe happens or doesn't happen. We need our meeting with where they are. So that's what we do, is to talk about this.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, maybe at end of life that you're more willing to talk. I mean, it's your last chance to be real. So, although, you know, some people don't want to talk about it at all. Yeah, I bet you do.
And like you said, putting yourself in their shoes, and that will bring more compassion out, and not judging people because if someone has a different belief, you can't be like super strong-willed in your own belief and try to put it on them.
Right.
Like Jesse said, you have the training to anything. If the family doesn't believe in blood transfusions for their child, you can't judge that.
Right.
This is a little easier than that.
Yeah, that would be difficult.
Yeah.
I totally respect everything that you do in hospice care. It's very difficult. When I teach about euthanasia in ethics, we talk a lot about hospice care too.
I have one story. When I worked in Washington State for hospice, they did have the death with dignity where you can get these certain pills and you take them a certain way, and it stops your heart, basically. So I had a couple, she had cancer and it was starting to come out of her skin and grow, and she wanted to do death with dignity, and she was atheist. And her daughter was a nurse, and she did not believe the same religion or non-religion. So so the patient had the pills ready. She had the direction. She had everything was planned out for her, and I was going to be there with her also. And then the daughter kept putting it off, and eventually she just kind of died naturally, I guess you would say, with the help of her comfort meds. But that wasn't the way she wanted to die, and I think about it all the time, thinking, that's not what she wanted. That wasn't her wishes.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's such a difficult time because it's your parent or your loved one, husband and wife or whatever. It's very difficult.
Right. You just have to stay neutral.
Right. Yeah. And so euthanasia is becoming legal in more states. Idaho is this tiny, it's a tiny bubble inside. All the states around it allow for it. Even Montana, not through a law, but through some kind of court precedent. So, I mean, there are strict parameters for that. Of course, you know those, right? And so you'd have to go through a lot. You wouldn't just do it off the cuff. No, it's a long process, and you have to have less than 6 months to live and all that. So yeah, it's very hard to respect people's wishes that are different than yours because if you believe something, you have your reasons. Atheists believe what they believe because they truly have their reasons. They believe their ideas as much as you believe your ideas, no matter what perspective you have. You don't believe something because you don't think that it's true. You believe it because you truly, honestly, especially about something like this, in your core believe that that's true. So it is very difficult to have clashing ideologies at that point. Yeah. I don't really have any help for that. Yeah.
So can you put this information of everything?
Yeah. If you email me.
Yeah, the sign-in sheet, let me see if there's a spot for an email address.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Write your email on the back of this sign-in sheet, and then,
I would love to chat with you because I would like to volunteer in some way that I can be useful and not cause any more stress.
Thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.
So yeah, like I said, make sure to sign the sign-in sheet, and then if you would like to leave your email address on either the bottom of the form or on the back of the form, then we can get you this PowerPoint presentation.
Great job.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.